Hello everyone. Now as you know, Michael Jordan fans are the worst sports fans of all time, and one of the many reasons why is because these people really believe that the past NBA sucked because they had less teams. Now, before I get into this, I want you to know that I made a separate video about how Michael Jordan fans will tear down every NBA person and every NBA era. So if you haven't played that video, you may want to play that video before you play this video. And also, I made another separate video about how Michael Jordan fans think everything in the 1980s and the 1990s was better and the best. So if you haven't played that video, you may want to play that video before you play this video. And also, I made another separate video about how Michael Jordan fans claim the NBA before 1979 sucked because players weren't skilled or tall or strong and more. So if you haven't played that video, you may want to play that video before you play this video. So anyway, let's get into this. I am going to explain to you why it is ridiculous when they think that the past NBA sucked because they had less teams. Here are the reasons why, in no particular order. First, they are disrespecting lots of NBA people. Next, they are dismissing lots of NBA people. Next, when they claim to respect the game and then they disrespect the game, they are contradicting themselves. Next, when they claim to love the game and then they dismiss the game, they are contradicting themselves. Next, Michael Jordan fans have a history of always trying to find a way to make Michael Jordan the number one NBA player of all time. So that right there shows you that they're not reliable. Next, understand why Michael Jordan fans are doing this. It's because they're just trying to find a way to make Michael Jordan the number one NBA player of all time. So that right there shows you that they're not reliable. Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that lots of the players that Michael Jordan played with don't agree with them? Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that lots of the players that Michael Jordan played against don't agree with them? Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that lots of the owners, general managers, coaches, and other NBA people that Michael Jordan played for don't agree with them? Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that lots of NBA Hall of Famers, lots of NBA legends, lots of NBA scouts, and lots of NBA experts don't agree with them? Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that Michael Jordan doesn't agree with them? Next, since lots of these people don't agree with them, why do Michael Jordan fans sometimes reference one or more of these people for one or more topics? Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that usually the only people who think this are Michael Jordan fans? Next, if this was the other way around and they were an NBA Hall of Famer or some other NBA person and they found out that there was a younger NBA fan who wasn't there when they played, who doesn't have that much tape of them, who isn't an expert on the past NBA and so on, and they found out that this younger NBA fan said this thing, they wouldn't agree with that fan. Next, if some non-Michael Jordan fan said this thing and it went against Michael Jordan, the Michael Jordan fans wouldn't agree with that non-Michael Jordan fan. Next, Michael Jordan fans have a contradiction. They always ask people who disagree with them if they were there when Michael Jordan played, if they went to his games, if they saw his games live on TV, and so on. And yet, they don't ask themselves these same type of questions when it comes to lots of other NBA Hall of Famers. If they did, they would know that it would go against them, and they wouldn't come to this kind of conclusion. Next, how come Michael Jordan fans don't say this kind of thing for every year that there was less teams in the NBA? Next, how come Michael Jordan fans don't say this kind of thing for other sports? Next, how come Michael Jordan fans don't say this kind of thing for some other people and some other things when it comes to other things outside of sports? Next, Michael Jordan fans have put the past NBA in a lose-lose situation. If they had more teams, Michael Jordan fans will still tear them down. If they had less teams, Michael Jordan fans will hold it against them. Next, a player can dominate this game, be above average, be average, or anything else, no matter how many teams are in the NBA. Next, I want you to think about something logical. Is it logical to assume that the past NBA sucked because they had less teams? Next, the players are not the ones who are responsible for how many teams are in the league. Next, when they try to find something wrong about the quality of the past NBA, They don't do the exact same thing for when Michael Jordan was in the NBA. Next. Or when it comes to the years that they think the NBA had nice quality. Just because the NBA added a team to the NBA, it doesn't mean the NBA is now tougher. Next. When the NBA adds a team to the NBA, it just means that the NBA added a team to the NBA. Next. It doesn't matter if there are less teams or not because they still play 82 games or they play a similar amount of games. Next. If less teams mean the NBA is not as good, then shouldn't the NBA want less teams? Because if the NBA is not as good, then the players can do better, which would help the NBA make more money. Next. If more teams means the NBA is better, then why doesn't the NBA just keep on adding more teams to the NBA? Next. The Michael Jordan fans have a contradiction. They count things that have to do with the past NBA, but if they think the past NBA was not that good because it had less teams, then they shouldn't count anything from the past NBA. Don't count the statistics, don't count the records, don't count the trophies, and there's more examples, but you get the point. They should just throw all these things out of the window because according to them, the past NBA was not that good because there were less teams in the NBA. And of course, if they did that, it would be ridiculous. Next. Michael Jordan fans have a contradiction. They make it seem like if Michael Jordan played in the past, he would put up even better numbers than he did because the NBA in the past was not that good. But there were NBA legends who actually put up those numbers that they think Michael Jordan would put up. But then they dismiss those NBA legends who put up those numbers. Next. They are just labeling the entire past NBA as if it was all the same. Next. What are the years the NBA was not good? Next. And when did the NBA become a better league? Next. How did they come up with those years? Next. And how do they know that they are right when it comes to the years that they came up with? Next. How many teams should be in the NBA? Next. How do they come up with that number? Next. How do they know that their number is the right number? Next. If they think the league was not good when there were less teams, then that means when Michael Jordan was in the NBA for the first few seasons, the NBA was not as good as the NBA later on when Michael Jordan was in the NBA. Next. If they think the league was not good when there were less teams, then that means the NBA in the 1980s was not as good as the NBA in the 1990s. Next. And if that's the case, then they should stop using Michael Jordan's 6 rings as one of the reasons he is the number 1 NBA player of all time because he won his rings in the 1990s. Next. If they think the league was not as good when there were less teams in the NBA, then that means today's NBA is better than when Michael Jordan was in the NBA. Next. When Michael Jordan played, many people felt like the NBA wasn't as good as it used to be in the past, and that the league was hurt by expansion, and the league was watered down, and that the reason Michael Jordan and his teams did so well was because it was easier to win. Next. When Michael Jordan came back after his first retirement, one of the reasons he came back was because he thought it would be easier to win rings, and one of the reasons was because there were more teams that were added to the NBA. Next. If adding more teams to the NBA means the NBA is now tougher, then by that logic, if the NBA adds one more team, the league is now tougher. Next. If having less teams means the NBA is not that tough, then by that logic, the NBA will never be tough because they can always go ahead and just add at least one more team to the NBA. Next. Just because the NBA adds another team doesn't mean the NBA is now tougher. Lots of teams never win. Lots of teams don't expect to win. Lots of teams don't expect to get lots of star players to sign there. Lots of teams that have star players do not expect to keep all the star players. Lots of teams can't compete with some of the other teams that are in the NBA. Lots of teams are considered as teams that would just try to put a reasonable team out there so that they can make money and roll the dice that maybe they can win the NBA Finals once in a while. Usually it is the same teams that just keep winning. Next. If they took out half the teams in the NBA, there would not be a big difference in which teams usually win the NBA Finals. Next. When there are less teams, it makes the NBA tougher because the players, the coaches, the scouts, and the experts have a better chance of figuring them out. Next. When there are less teams, it makes the NBA tougher. There are less spots. The more spots you add in the league, that means there will be more players. The league gets diluted. The league gets watered down. Think of it like this. If they took out half the teams in the league, then there would be less spots, so lots of players would leave, and they would keep the top players, so the league would be more tougher. If they added more teams to the league, there would be more spots, so they would add more players, and the players wouldn't be as tough, so the league would be less tougher. Think of it like this. When they have the All-Star game, they get the top players, so the quality is tougher. If they add more spots, then they get more players, then they don't get the top players, and the game won't be as tough. Next. Some stars may have done better than they usually did as more teams were being added in the NBA. Next. There is no fact to prove that some star did better just because they had less teams that were in the NBA. Next. There is no fact to prove that some star did not do as well just because they added another team to the NBA. Next. There is no fact to prove that the NBA is not as tough when it had less teams in the NBA. Hey, please subscribe. And if you disagree with me on something, you can go on my program and show me your facts on whatever you disagree on. If you want to go on, let's set it up. Send me an email. The email is right there in the description section. Thank you.